Interrupted debate on the second reading of the Animal Welfare Amendment Bill.
Now, Brendan Burns had an interrupted call. If he wishes to continue, he has about 6.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to resume my comments on the Animal Welfare Amendment Bill, a bill introduced, first mentioned in the name of Simon Bridges, but which became a government bill under the name of the Minister of Agriculture, David Carter, and it's good to acknowledge the Minister is with us this afternoon as we pick up the second reading of this bill. And it's an important bill because it acknowledges that New Zealanders have a high disregard, a low threshold of tolerance when it comes to matters of animal welfare and animal abuse. And these perhaps have come into great public prominence over the last year or two with some rather ghastly, horrific cases, mostly involving domestic animals, but one has to say some of the background to this bill does relate to the occasional ill treatment or neglect of farm animals, and part of that context, I believe, will be issues around negligence and animal welfare on some of the farms owned by the Crafer family and the dairy herds that they were not necessarily looking after particularly well. So the bill expands the categorisation of ill treatment of animals to include a new category of reckless ill treatment, and that's really around neglect, where animals are abandoned and left perhaps without food or water, and obviously can suffer quite severe injuries and even death in that situation. Now, I note that Budget 2010 does expand funding to the SPCA in terms of its role in terms of dealing with, if you like, the domestic side of animal ill treatment and abuse. And I applaud the government for that. I think that's a very sound move. Congratulate the government to acknowledge that the SPCA, the Royal SPCA, plays a very, very good role. It is a voluntary organisation in large part, funded often by public donations. I'm sure other members have collected for the SPCA, as have I. But the bigger question I wanted to ask the Minister, if he takes a call in this debate, is around the funding for MAF. And I haven't yet had a chance to look through the budget papers, but currently MAF, which of course is the other big player in respect of animal welfare, most particularly in respect of farm animal welfare, has an entire complement of staff in respect of animal welfare of just 7 full-time equivalents, or in fact 8.75, but 7 of those actually engaged. 5 in the North Island, 2 in the South Island, I understood from the submissions that MAF made to us on the Select Committee. 5 in the North Island, 2 in the South Island. Of course, in a past life I lived in Marlborough, and I well remember a very distressed SPCA volunteer inspector coming to me, showing me photographs of neglected farm animals, which he was absolutely powerless to deal with. He just simply didn't have the powers. There wasn't this category of reckless disregard. And frankly, he said it wasn't his job to deal with issues of animal negligence on the farm. He was busy enough with animal welfare issues in the domestic sector. And of course, the only 2 MAF animal welfare staff were based in Christchurch. That's a 3.5, 4-hour drive from Marlborough, so it's not an easy task for a MAF officer to drive up and inspect a farm in Marlborough, 4 hours away, or even further to Nelson. And I'd like the Minister to give some indication of what he was able to do through the budget process to ensure that, in fact, those staffing levels are supported in the same way as I've acknowledged. The Minister has been able to win fiscal support from his colleagues in terms of increasing the resource available from the Crown to support the SPCA and the very fine work that they do, because that's really, really important. I'd also like to just look at further this issue of recklessness and what the change that is enshrined in this Act comes from is an acknowledgement that people can behave recklessly, and that can have huge and horrendous consequences for animals. It picks up on how under the Arms Act you can be charged for reckless discharge of a firearm, you can be charged with recklessly driving a motor vehicle. It's not the same as willful, but clearly the end result with a firearm, with a vehicle or neglect of animals can be very, very much the same. It can result in death and injury to innocent animals or obviously in the case of those other two pieces of law, human life. And I think that that's an appropriate change encapsulated under this bill. Labor is very much supportive of this. We believe that most New Zealanders find animal cruelty to be truly repugnant. We want to see people punished. Part of the problem has been that prosecutions can take a long time to bring to a successful conclusion. We're talking five-figure sums to bring prosecutions against people, even a single prosecution, to a successful conclusion. We want to support this bill. It is an important signal to those in the community, both in terms of domestic animals, where there will now be better enforcement, better resource, better support. But I would like the Minister to comment about what resources he's been able to secure in terms of farm animals, because it's truly important. If we consider the numbers, there are probably far more animals out there on the farms than there are in the homes of New Zealanders. And if we consider the size of the now reduced sheep flock of probably down to 35 million now, perhaps, it's still down to 30 million. I haven't been counting in the last little while. And I think we're up to 6 million dairy cows. My colleague Ashraf Chowdhury will keep a better total. 100 animals in total. So obviously the farming sector provides a huge component in that, and I think it's imperative that we know whether MAF is going to get some extra resource so it can play its part in supporting this bill, which commendably does increase the penalties for those who either willfully or recklessly ill-treat animals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.